Hello and welcome to Inspire Coach. As we always say, this is the platform where we challenge, build, motivate, and encourage one another for the betterment of who we truly are. My name is Naomi Loshie, and it's always a pleasure to have you join us. So lately, I've been thinking about words like walls, doors, fences. And what comes to mind when we mention such words? For me, I think of security, I think of safety, I think of boundaries. So today, let's discuss boundaries. And what are boundaries? A boundary is anything that marks the border, that creates a demarcation, that tells you this is where you start and this is where you stop. Boundaries mark territories. Boundaries mark where a house can be, how far a house can be. So boundaries can be real or imagined. When we say real, we mean physical boundaries. We could have boundaries for a nation. We could have boundaries for cities. We could have boundaries for your land. We also have boundaries in our personal lives. This could be emotional boundaries, work boundaries. It could be just a whole vast of different aspects of boundaries in our lives. Our lives are our territories, and it's usually our responsibility, sole responsibility, to take care of every demarcation in our lives. Sometimes we'll feel like somebody did something that made you be what you are or go through what you're going through. But if we remember that it's our responsibility to create the boundaries, then we'll be able to live our lives purposefully. I've been thinking about my personal life and the boundaries I create. Do I respect the boundaries I have? Do I respect my values? What boundaries do I have? Where did they come from? Do they work for me or do they not? The idea is for me to understand myself, for me to know who I am, for me to know my values, for me to know my worth. Then from there, I'll be able to create proper boundaries and I'll be able to set them. As I said earlier, our lives are our responsibility. Protecting our values is our sole responsibility. Protecting my boundaries is my sole responsibility. And if I do not know how to protect them, I'll find myself lost. I'll find myself mingled and intertwined into people's boundaries, into people's lives, and I'll be lost. I'll lose my purpose. I'll forget my tracks. I'll be away from what my calling is just because I forgot or I downgraded the boundaries that I need to keep. So it begins with me understanding myself, me understanding what do I want with my life? Where am I headed to? Where am I coming from? What is important for me and what is not? From there, I'm able to create boundaries and to know that this is what I want, this is what I want to go with. How much can I compromise? And if I compromise, what the effect does that have on me? What effect does that have on my life? What effect does that have on the values I've kept for myself? And some of the ways I've learned about keeping my boundaries is by simply learning how to say no. I'm naturally a yes person. I find it easier to say yes than no. I don't like confrontations. I find it too hard. I find that energy not working for me. But I have paid a deep cost. I've paid a dear cost for just being a yes person all through. It's been at the expense sometimes of my happiness. It's been at the expense sometimes of my values. It's been at the expense sometimes of my beliefs. Then through self-discovery, through learning a lot about me, I've allowed myself to walk in this journey of understanding my boundaries and learning how to keep them. At first, there was so much resistance. I didn't know how to handle the resistance that came because my whole body was wired into saying yes all the time. And I did feel like sometimes the more I said yes, the more friends I would keep. The more I'd have people applaud me. But for what? For the expense of my own life, for the expense of my own values. And that's how I was not able to live in my purpose for a long time. And my life was stagnant. I would see very little results of my own life, be it my spiritual life, be it in my finances, be it in relationships, because I was afraid of putting my foot down and saying, you know what, these are my boundaries, and I believe in them. And I know that they count for what I've been called to become, for that very purpose that I'm here on this earth. So having learned that, I just allowed myself to get into a system where I would have to just learn how to say no. It was not easy at first. Seriously, it wasn't easy. Seeing people look at you different because there's a way in which I'd given people space in so many boundaries. So I began reading books on boundaries, and one that I would recommend is Boundaries by Henry Cloud. Never have I seen a book like that. He made this topic of boundaries look so practical, and it has worked for me. I'm still on this journey. I'm still learning how to say no. Sometimes I do, sometimes I relapse, but it's working for me. I'm loving the person I'm becoming. I'm loving the fact that I can stand at the gate of my life and say, this one I need in and this one I don't. I've made a few compromises here and there. They've hurt me along the way, but I've learned to stand up and keep my boundaries again. See, boundaries are important because they define you. They tell people how far they can come, what to cross and what not to cross. And when a boundary is crossed, you'll be strong enough to stand and say, hey, stop, you're crossing a line. And that's a message you'll find yourself being able to relay to the world around you, that this is how far you can come. I'm learning to every day guard who I am. I'm learning to every day guard my values. I'm learning every day to guard my worth because that's what I'm made of by God's grace. So I'm learning to shield my purpose because at the end of the day, my purpose counts. I'm not in this earth for no good reason. I'm not in this earth to just live, eat, sleep, get a family, get a house, get a car, and that's it. No, there's a bigger purpose. And for me to live it, I've got to guard my purpose by keeping my boundaries, being vocal enough, being able to stand firm and be assertive on what I stand for, on what I believe for. It's a beautiful journey. It's got thorns along the way. You lose people, you lose friends. Sometimes you even get uncomfortable with yourself. But that consistency and being persistent helps because eventually I find my purpose and I'm able to live it. I believe that also for you, it's not too late to start setting boundaries. You can start small. You can start with the simplest one. Start by saying no to those simple things you've always allowed that you're uncomfortable with. Then you grow gradually. It's a journey, a step at a time, a day at a time. Eventually, you're grounded, and everybody will know this is where your demarcation is. And you'll get to a place where you know, I can only allow what I need in my life, and what I don't need, I lock it out. You have that power. It's not too late, it's not too hard, but start. Start from somewhere. You are worth it. You're always worth it, as I always say. You're always a valuable person. And the moment you realize that and you start keeping your boundaries, you live your life to the fullest. That's all we had for you today. And I'm so glad you were able to join us. Until next time, remain motivated. Thank you.